And if my daughter was missing, all of the people that are working on this case are the people who I would choose.
Well, hey folks, if you're like me, you have the name of Summer Wells popping into your head from time to time. Never more than when I'm out here in the woods. And there are a number of theories out there. Everything ranging from abduction, human trafficking, to foul play. Even the theory that Summer Wells wandered off, got injured, lost, and died from the elements. I want to explore the possibility of that last scenario in this video, but first I want to talk about a few others. Well, hey, thanks for joining Profiling Evil, and please take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button. You know, there are a lot of theories bouncing around about Summer's disappearance, and the only authoritative sources on the subject come from TBI, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations, who still has not been able to narrow this thing down to a single cause. In other words, all the leads that they've had thus far have dried up. Now, that doesn't mean that there may be things that they're working on behind the scenes that we're not aware of, but the last official statement from TBI shows their frustration and provides us with little information. So we continue to speculate and wonder. I'm going to be focusing my remarks on the tragic disappearance of Summer Wells, that 5-year-old girl who went missing in June of 2021 from her family's rural property in Tennessee. Now, her disappearance has raised many questions about how children can simply vanish completely. Now, while every case is unique and Summer's specific situation remains unsolved, there are several plausible explanations for why a young child like her could simply disappear in the woods and frankly vanish despite extensive search efforts by law enforcement, by search and rescue personnel, and by you, concerned citizens. Now, Summer's disappearance from her Hawkins County, Tennessee home sparked a media firestorm. There were extensive search efforts, countless theories about what could have happened to this little girl. And I want to kind of explore some of those in a little bit of detail. Investigators and search teams initially focused on the idea that Summer Wells wandered off into the surrounding wilderness. Now, this lack of clear evidence has led to widespread speculation about other possible explanations, including foul play, abduction, and even family involvement. And while I'm going to focus on some of the things that support how she might have wandered off and disappeared, I want to first acknowledge the various possibilities, combining factual information from the case with some of the more speculative theories that have surfaced in the media. So first, let's set aside the idea that she wandered off. This wandering hypothesis we'll talk about in a few minutes after we explore a couple of the other things that I've got listed here. Now again, think about the environment we're in. But first, I want to talk about the possibility that Summer Wells was abducted by a stranger. This possibility has been a major focus of speculation, although there's no solid evidence to confirm that it happened that way. Now, many people believe that Summer didn't wander off and that she wasn't found near her home, and that has caused them to think about the possibility that she was kidnapped. So the first one that we want to talk about is, was Summer Wells snatched by a passing driver? Summer's home, while remote, is near a road. Now, one theory suggests that a passing motorist could have seen this little tyke outside and taken the opportunity to abduct her. However, keep in mind, investigators have stated over and again that there's no evidence of an abduction. No tire tracks, no signs of struggle, no witnesses reporting seeing a suspicious vehicle with a little girl in it. Now, another possibility is that Summer was part of a targeted abduction. So she was targeted. And this was a big theory by a number of online sleuths who speculate that Summer's disappearance is proof that this was a planned or targeted event. Now, if you look at the case from the fundamental standpoint of victimology, it's true. Low-risk victims are statistically targeted. They're victimized by people that know them. Now, those who are basing their thoughts on this theory are failing to take into account the challenge that occurs based on the situation, the circumstances around what was going on, and look around, the environment. By simply wandering from her home and down near the road, Summer could have become the victim of an opportunistic predator who happened to be passing by. Now, I'm not suggesting that that happened, only that that is one explanation. And sharing this information is a way to maybe dilute the possibility that she was targeted. Now, we have to accept the fact, though, that Summer's disappearance in broad daylight, when her mother and grandmother were reportedly close by, makes the idea of a random abduction seem less likely. Again, there are pros and cons to each theory and about whether this could have been done by somebody who was known to Summer, she was targeted, or if she could have fallen victim to an opportunistic predator, some abuser or predator that happened to be passing by. But again, keep in mind, Tennessee investigators say there are no suspects that fit this pattern or description. Now, there are ghost stories out there, and there are theories spun up by the true crimers, but this leaves us with the possibility of human trafficking. Now, some people believe a child could be targeted for trafficking purposes, especially given the isolated, impoverished nature of the area where Summer Wells lived. Traffickers might exploit this very thing, but it's important to point out again, Tennessee law enforcement authorities have not found any credible evidence to support this theory. And experts in child trafficking have pointed out that this kind of a scenario would be really unusual, especially in this little rural area. Now, some would argue that it certainly is possible, and I'm not going to challenge that. Now, if Summer Wells' disappearance was criminal in nature, though, we have to consider whether the individual or the individuals who orchestrated her disappearance were part of her inner circle, those trusted to her, or strangers. Again, based on victimology, we have to consider family members. So I want to talk about family members for just a moment. The media has paid significant attention to Summer Wells' family, largely because of inconsistencies in their statements and also their behavior. I mean, the behavior of her parents is particularly troubling. In particular, her father, Don Wells. Now, no charges have been filed against the family, but online speculation continues to be rife with people questioning whether the family may have had some involvement in her disappearance, whether directly or indirectly. So it's important to point out, again, that law enforcement hasn't necessarily cleared Summer's parents, nor have they charged them with any kind of a crime. That they did, though, remove the other children in the home and took those out of the parents' care. So there clearly were concerns that they had in regard to the environment that the children were living in.
We don't have the evidence in this case to know for sure whether or not Summer was abducted or whether or not she walked away from her home and became lost. It's really important to us to not focus all of our efforts on just one of those two. We think that the only way we'll be successful in finding Summer is to continue to walk down both of those investigative paths to ensure that we don't become focused on one area alone and miss something that's crucially important.
So this leads me to spend a couple of minutes just talking about an accidental death cover-up. Because one theory speculates, both in the media and in the community, that Summer might have accidentally died at home, something like a fall or drowning. And we've seen those videos on this. And given the rural and isolated nature of the property, some people are speculating that the family could have hidden her body somewhere in that dense forest. And again, think about this area that we're in, and that they've been able to elude searchers by hiding her. But keep in mind, the authorities have consistently maintained that Summer's parents have been cooperative in the investigation, and that there's no physical evidence to point to this scenario. So it would appear from the outside looking in that there's clearly significant family dysfunction and neglect based on the children being removed. Summer's home life has come under scrutiny, with media coverage pointing to previous issues of substance abuse in the family, legal troubles involving her parents. Dawn Wells reportedly has a history of criminal offenses, including domestic violence and DUI, which has led to theorizing of this instability in the home that could have played a role in Summer's disappearance. Now, again, keep in mind, the Tennessee Department of Children's Services became involved in that family after Summer's disappearance, and they removed 3 brothers. These are Summer's brothers from the home. Now, authorities haven't specified why they did this, but it certainly raises concern about the environment that Summer was living in. We also have to take into account the contradictory statements made by Summer's parents. Now think back on these for a moment. Dawn Wells has made public statements expressing concern that his daughter may have been kidnapped or trafficked. Now that's really significant, because on the flip side, Candace Bly has been much more reluctant to speak extensively to the media. Now, she did join my buddy Dr. Phil on a show, but these differing approaches have fueled speculation that there might be more to the story than we're seeing. Some people are finding it suspicious that a child could disappear in such a short time frame. But remember again, according to the family, Summer was only outside for 2 minutes before vanishing, leading to these ongoing questions about whether the full truth has been told by the family, or by the parents in this case. And we got to consider the possibility of neighbors or someone in the community being involved. And keep in mind, no neighbors were named as suspects. Now, rural communities like the one in which Summer lived tend to be small and close-knit. It's been suggested that somebody familiar with the family or the local area could have been involved. And in previous videos that I've done on the Summer Wells case, we've looked at some of these other factors, including looking at the registered sex offenders in the area. So you might want to go back and check those out and kind of refresh your mind on those. At one point, remember that TBI, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations, issued a statement, though, asking for help from the community in identifying a possible witness. Remember, it was a man driving a Toyota pickup who was seen in the area on the day of Summer's disappearance. Now, the man that was sought was only a potential witness, according to police, but this announcement just led to incredible speculation that there could have been someone near the property who was watching Summer or her family. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Put them down below so we can have some discussion about this. Some people have suggested there could be a person in the area with knowledge of the terrain who might have taken advantage of Summer's brief moment of vulnerability and taken her and hidden her somewhere. Despite this theory, there's no solid evidence that's emerged from any neighbors or any community members to suggest there's direct involvement. Now, one area that I'm always thinking about, especially in rural areas, is this thought that maybe wildlife interaction is involved. Now think about this for a moment. Many cases of child disappearance involve the possibility of wildlife. This scenario has been less discussed in this case, Summer Wells case, perhaps due to the lack of physical evidence that maybe a large predator was involved. But that said, Summer went missing in an area that has home to, by all accounts, black bears, coyotes, and wild boars. And some people have speculated that Summer might have wandered a short distance and encountered a wild animal that could have caused serious injury or death. Now, if she had had an accident and was unable to move, she also could have become a target of some carnivorous animal. And if this happened in an isolated spot, think again about the area we're in, her body could have quickly been hidden by vegetation or carried away by animals, which is part of that process of predation. In the case of these animal attacks or consumption after the fact, it's possible that scavenger animals could have reduced the physical evidence to the point that Summer's remains are difficult to locate. They could have dragged them off into the dense woods and uneven terrain, a place where they could easily hide the body, or it could easily be hidden from anyone that's out looking for her. We have to keep in mind that also in this area there are underground caves, wells, springs that have dried up, hidden areas in and around Summer's home. And it's possible that this little tyke could have fallen into one of those natural or man-made hazards. Think about the possibility of an abandoned well or a sinkhole in the area. These features are not uncommon in rural parts of Tennessee, where land development can leave dangerous, unmarked holes in the ground. Again, something that has to be considered. And think about the fact that the Appalachian region is also known for its cave system. Some believe that Summer could have wandered into a small cave or a crevice, became trapped and unable to get herself out and died there. Without proper equipment or knowledge of the area, such a location would be really difficult for searchers to find her body.
Many people have speculated what they think has happened in this case. The difficult part of speculation is that if we as investigators speculate and focus our efforts in one direction, we're making a huge mistake. We have to make sure that we're being completely comprehensive as we investigate. And being focused in one direction is a tragedy for an investigation. So until we find evidence that points us in a direction that we know is the right direction, we'll continue to be comprehensive. We'll continue to explore every option that can be out there, and we would continue to ask for the public's help in doing so.
So with all of that, let's focus on the possibility that Summer Wells could have wandered off and fallen victim to the elements, not a predator. To better understand how this could happen, I want to refer to some of the reasons that expert search and rescue personnel consider when looking for lost children. And again, you got to keep in mind, this is a 5-year-old. Even though she's raised out in the woods, she's 5 years old. So disorientation. It's possible that Summer wandered from home, became disoriented, and couldn't find her way back. Now the area around her home, again, is extremely steep and covered in dense foliage, which could easily confuse that child. In such situations, children often stray further from where they were to hopefully find familiar circumstances or landmarks. That creates a tougher search problem. As mentioned before, hazards like creeks and ravines, caves are dangerous. These are key areas that searchers like to look around because children are drawn to the water. Now, speculation arose that Summer could have fallen in a creek or river and been swept away, but extensive searches of water bodies have yielded no evidence thus far. But despite the significant manpower deployed, including canine units, helicopters, and drones, there has been no trace of Summer Wells in the woods. Now, this has led investigators to reconsider whether she could have wandered away without being found. This ongoing lack of evidence supporting this theory has caused all kinds of speculation.
Hey everybody, look who I'm hanging out with. And listen, I'm not attending choir practice, but I just wanted to tell you that you need to be watching Profiling Evil YouTube. Don't miss it. I'm telling you, there's something there for you every single time. I never miss. You shouldn't either.
Let's think about disorientation and panic. And if any of you have ever been lost, you understand this one. Children, Summer's age, are particularly vulnerable to becoming lost in dense woods, especially in areas like eastern Tennessee, which is known for its rugged terrain and thick vegetation. Now think about this 5-year-old lacking the cognitive and spatial awareness that an adult might have. They wander deeper into the woods after becoming disoriented. And once lost, a child's natural response is often panic. So instead of remaining in one place, which is the thing that is advised in survival situations, a child might continue moving, often in random directions. And this behavior could take her further away from search teams who might be sweeping through the certain areas that have been designated as areas that they think are possibilities. Now, even as Summer had tried calling for help, the natural landscape could have absorbed her little cries. These hills and valleys and dense trees can hinder sound from traveling, especially if searchers are on the opposite side of a ridge or in a different part of the forest. We have to consider the fact that Summer Wells may have suffered an injury or simply became too tired to keep moving and then succumbed to the environment. The wilderness presents many physical challenges for a young child, such as uneven ground, rocky areas, rivers, thick underbrush. It is possible that Summer could have fallen and injured herself, perhaps lost consciousness or became immobilized. If she had fallen down a steep embankment, for instance, into a ravine and got stuck, or fell into a creek, it could mean that she's hidden from view by all these natural barriers that are out there. And keep in mind that a young child like Summer Wells isn't equipped to walk long distances, especially if she's under emotional stress. If Summer Wells became exhausted and decided to rest, she could have succumbed to fatigue and cold in a place hidden from plain view. Think about the dense vegetation again. It's easily concealing a little child lying on the ground, even from the air, and for those walking on foot. We talked a little earlier about wildlife encounters, and we have to consider the environment in addition. Rural Tennessee is home to black bear, coyote, wild boars. And while it's rare for these animals to actively hunt humans, especially in more populated areas, this is really rural. And it's not impossible that the child might have fallen into some dangerous encounter with wildlife. Now, in the worst case scenario, an animal might have attacked Summer Wells. And if this happened, it could have occurred far from where she initially went missing. And the behavior of animals is pretty unique because animals will sometimes drag their prey into dense cover, making it really difficult for other animals to find it, but more importantly, for search teams to find the victim. If Summer had a fatal accident, there may have been scavenging animals that came along, and that could lead to a rapid disappearance of physical remains, further complicating the search efforts. Now, in one of my older videos, I showed how many creeks, rivers, streams, bogs, river bottoms there were in this area. There are hundreds of places where this child could have fallen victim. They pose a significant danger to children who are unfamiliar with water safety, even though we know that Summer liked the water and she liked swimming. If she bumped her head or something, it changes all the rules. Now, children are naturally curious and drawn to water, but they also are highly vulnerable to drowning. So if Summer fell into a fast-moving creek, she could have been carried downstream, trapped under some brush, and that could have led to her death. And that would have concealed her body for an extended period of time. Now, even small ponds or deeper pools of water can hide a body for a significant amount of time, especially if there's dense algae or reeds or other aquatic plants. And we've seen pictures of how those ponds were covered with algae in some places. This obscures the visibility from the surface, and it really makes it difficult for anybody searching in the water. And as many of you know, I've worked with water search teams for many years. They're quick to remind all of us of how challenging it is to find a body in the water. But how challenging is it to find them on land? And again, we've been talking a little bit about this, but even with advanced technology and expert personnel, search teams struggle to cover these vast areas. The terrain where Summer disappeared was challenging for ground teams with dense forests, hills, caves, rivers, water bodies. The steep and overgrown terrain of rural Tennessee can significantly impede search efforts, even if they're using helicopters or drones for the aerial searches. These dense canopies, especially when the foliage is out, block anything that's happening on the ground, which on the ground, searchers might just walk within feet of a hidden child without realizing it, especially if that child, in Summer's case, was hidden by thick vegetation. Just think about how difficult it would be to find a little child out here. In fact, to kind of show the area, I'm going to drive my ATV through the forest on a small game trail to give you a sense of how hard it would be to pick things out, even if you're walking along. And the longer a search goes, the harder it becomes to maintain energy and precision to really be paying attention to everything. These search teams are under intense pressure, and they are looking for a body, for clues, for anything, but they can pass a lot of things, the forest or the trees. Even if I think about them flying a helicopter or a drone overhead, it really is difficult to see what's happening on the ground. In fact, I'm going to pop up a drone for a minute and explore how tough it is to see things, and you won't even see me moving through the trees as this drone flies overhead. Now think about weather too, because weather can play a critical role on whether the child's able to survive or whether the search teams can be effective. For instance, if it's cold, that can lead to hypothermia very quickly, and a child could succumb to that very quickly. If the weather is bad, it could be destroying evidence on the ground, like footprints and other things. And think about these small children. They're not going to leave much of an impression on the ground as they walk along. All of these things would shield this child from view. So think about the impact that weather can have on the search team as well, who might have to contend with heavy rains or wind or fog or heat, all of those things. In those initial days of searching, those search teams had to deal with weather and with all of the elements as they went about trying to find Summer Wells. And again, think about Summer's height and weight. She's a 5-year-old little girl, tiny little thing, not weighing a whole lot. Her survival skills or her awareness to make herself visible to searchers is really limited. In fact, the mentality of a child sometimes when scared is to hide, thinking they're safer, or to remain quiet out of fear, and that makes it harder for search teams to find them. Now, search and rescue experts say that a young child's tracks are more easily obscured than those of an adult. Makes sense to me, frankly. But if this child was wearing light shoes or barefoot, I think she was probably barefoot, environmental factors like the wind, rain, plant growth, all of that can easily obscure and erase any kind of physical evidence. So with all this speculation, we're still left with the question of what happened to Summer Wells.
We've had over 6,500 leads, tips and leads come in on this case. Those have all been reviewed. They've been worked. We continue to get those. And it is a monstrous task, but it's one that's not overwhelmed us. We have been strategic in the way that we've handled this investigation. We have some of our most talented agents assigned to this case, some of our most talented intelligence analysts from the Bureau assigned to this case. We have brought in subject matter experts within TBI from across the state to assist in this investigation. We have thrown everything that we know to throw at this case. and we haven't had the answers that we need yet. We know we'll get them, but we don't have them today.
Her disappearance is a heart-wrenching mystery, and the potential reasons that she went missing remain in place. They reflect the complex nature of rural, wooded environments, particularly for a small child when you're searching for them. Now, the combination of the terrain, the possibility of wildlife encounters, or the challenge that search operations create, there is a perfect storm where the child could just vanish without a trace. And with each possibility, none of them explain the disappearance, although they illustrate how vulnerable Summer Wells was in this natural environment where she could just disappear and evade the most serious of search efforts. Now, I don't know about you, I don't know what happened to Summer Wells, but I do believe that law enforcement and concerned citizens in and around Hawkins County, Tennessee, have searched tirelessly for her. It's possible that she might turn up one day as an adult, having lived in a life as an abducted child with a new identity. In my opinion, the chances of that happening are less likely than the possibility that Summer Wells wandered off, became lost, had some kind of an accident, or eventually just succumbed to the rugged Tennessee environment that she loves so much. And I'd like to know your thoughts on this case, and whether our discussion today has given you anything additional to consider as you do your own personal sleuthing into the disappearance of Summer Wells. I want to thank all of you for your support of Profiling Evil, and I want to ask you to share us with your friends. Make sure you're looking for us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And do not forget about Profiling Evil podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. You might also check out profilingevil.com on the web. It's a place where you can go to get the most up-to-date information on cases that we're talking about. While you're there, I hope you'll sign up for the BOLO. That's our digital newsletter, and it stands for Be on the Lookout. And the only way you're going to get the BOLO is if you've signed up for it. Only those people who have signed up get the digital newsletter. So please sign up. And I promise I'm not sharing your information with anybody. And while you're on the website, check out our new crowdsourced missing persons and unsolved homicides map. It is a cool map where you can enter cases from your own community, and you can make sure that they're shared and talked about by anybody who's interested. Now, if you're a family member of a missing person or an investigator handling one of those kinds of cases, including murder cases, we'll also give you a platform where you can record a short video that might help people understand the victimology. Who is this missing loved one? Or who is this person who was murdered? Hey, thanks so much for your support of Profiling Evil, and we'll see you all soon at the next crime scene.
Hey everybody, look who I'm hanging out with. And listen, I'm not attending choir practice, but I just wanted to tell you that you need to be watching Profiling Evil YouTube. Don't miss it. I'm telling you, there's something there for you every single time. I never miss. You shouldn't either.